that, please let's welcome the Democrat gubernatorial candidate, Mr. Jared Polis.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful that you're providing a forum for all of those who aspire to positions of responsibility and leadership of our great state to talk about one of the most important issues in our state, and that is water policy. I want to thank you for the invitation to address you here today. It's really a pleasure to be able to discuss the future of water policy, some of my past efforts as a representative in Congress. You know, as a wise Westerner once said, if you're talking, you ain't learning anything. And my goal here is to demonstrate the respect I have for Colorado's water, our water community, the work that all of you do together, the work that all of you do independently, really to make our headwater state the model for the West on water. There's no better place to take the pulse of Colorado water than at the Colorado Water Congress. So thanks for the invitation. You know, I, of course, don't need to tell any of you that water is our lifeblood. It's our singular, most precious natural resource in our great state. How to manage in the face of a hotter, drier, more populated future is really one of the greatest challenges that Colorado's next governor and the governor after that and the governor after that are going to have to confront. It's a question whose answer will define not only our economic trajectory as a state, but also the character of Colorado and of our communities for generations to come. People want to grow their families and their businesses right here in Colorado in many ways because of our amazing high quality of life. And that means different things to different people. It means our productive economy. It means our vibrant and culturally rich cities. It means our innovative spirit. It means our viable and productive agricultural heritage. It means our access to locally grown foods, our strong environment. It means, of course, as we reflect here in Eagle County, our world-class skiing and water sports, our robust outdoor recreation opportunities from hunting to fishing to hiking to mountain climbing. I could keep going, but we'd be here all afternoon talking about all the great reasons that we love Colorado. But here's the thing that each of those items on that abbreviated list has in common. Water touches or runs through every single one of those. So given water's importance to our present and our future, it's critical that all of Colorado's leaders go about overcoming the challenges that we face today and the challenges that we know that we will face in the future in a bipartisan and consistent way. And though it doesn't mean that everybody here agrees on every issue, this commitment is a proud area of unity among the Republicans and Democrats who represent our state in Congress. And I'm proud to have partnered with my Colorado colleagues to fight for Colorado's water rights and safeguard our supply. Even just last week, Representative Scott Tipton and I began circulating among our colleagues a bipartisan letter that calls on Congress to fully fund the Land and Water Conservation Fund before it expires at the end of this year. And I was proud to work with my Colorado colleagues in Congress to pass House legislation to enable the town of Minturn, not too far from here, to use its water rights to fill Bolt's Ditch, ensuring access to safe drinking water without sacrificing the integrity of the surrounding areas. You know, it's critical that Colorado's next governor can bring to the table all of the stakeholders and perspectives in Colorado's water policy. Of course, Republicans and Democrats, yes, but also federal, state, and local office holders, farmers and ranchers, scientists and environmental advocates, the outdoor recreation industry and outdoor recreation enthusiasts, and of course, Coloradans on both sides of the Continental Divide, so that we can preserve and defend Colorado's water. That's how I've approached this issue in Congress, and it shows a lot about how I plan to approach it as governor. Few people are more acutely aware of Colorado's water challenges than, of course, our farmers and ranchers. Water is the lifeblood of the agriculture industry. which is the backbone of our rural economy, an important part of the diversity of our statewide economy. And about 80% of our state's water usage is agricultural. We can't get away with treating drought as some distant threat looming on the horizon. Drought is a factor of life here today. I've heard from many ranchers forced to sell off their livestock because of drought. According to our state's business economic outlook, with cattle prices dropping, corn and wheat prices falling to their lowest point in years, the lower incomes for farmers and ranchers, coupled with the higher cost of living that we've all been experiencing, I think we can begin to understand why so many rural families are deeply concerned about the future. Let me be clear, there's a lot of causes of this trend, but one of the major ones is our changing climate. And it's hard to overstate the risk that our changing climate poses for the future of agriculture, the future of water, and the future of our state. We depend on our agriculture sector for billions of dollars in exports every year. Meanwhile, the lower snowpack from the drought, warmer temperatures are making it harder than ever to get ahead. With diminished snowpack comes poorer river health, lower reservoir levels, shorter ski seasons, the economic lifeblood of areas like this, and lower income and revenues for entire families and entire communities. Our economy simply can't afford to put ideological resistance over scientific fact. We need leaders at all levels who understand the grave threats that are posed by climate change and are also willing to make tough decisions that will be needed to combat that change while also modernizing our management of water to do more with less. We also need leaders at all levels, federal and state, that recognize that we cannot protect our water supply without also preserving the public lands that make up more than a third of our state. I was proud to work with stakeholders across western Colorado, and in particular here in Eagle and Summit counties, to craft legislation protecting nearly 100,000 acres of wilderness, recreation, and conservation areas in the White River National Forest along our continental divide, along with protecting those vital watersheds that these lands contain. And I'm proud to have the support of several of the water districts active in the area in our effort to preserve those watersheds. And you know that if I have the opportunity to be governor of this great state, I'll stand up to any DC politician that wants to carve up or sell off our public lands. You know, it would be challenging enough if Colorado's population was in fact stable, but we also face the realities of a growing state. The climb ahead of us is even steeper. That's why it's so important that we make implementing and fully funding and improving Colorado's water plan a priority for the years ahead. Colorado's water plan is a carefully crafted roadmap that really brought stakeholders together from throughout the state, many with competing interests, together in good faith and shared vision. But if crafting the plan was difficult, implementing and funding the plan is an even more daunting challenge. But it's one that I will be up to as governor, and I'm eager to accept, and I'm confident that working together we can achieve. In order to do this, we need to find and dedicate $100 million in the budget each year to implement the plan. And that's at the same time we're funding many other priorities in our state, whether it's annual obligations to PARA for our retirees, bringing our state's transportation infrastructure into the 21st century, ending decades of underinvestment in our public schools, and particularly our rural schools, all within the confines of a constitutional constraints that make it difficult to make long-term investments in our state. I would also highlight that this year there is a very dangerous ballot initiative that would ask us to go deeper into debt to fund road infrastructure projects across the state with no new revenue streams. That was recently qualified for the ballot. That would truly, if it were to pass, put any efforts to fund the water plan and water infrastructure, not to mention education and healthcare, at even greater risk by squeezing out all of our ability at the legislature to direct the general fund expenditures. And I would hope the water community would rally behind efforts to defeat that initiative. But the bottom line is that we can't treat our water infrastructure funding as simply nice to have or aspirational or a goal. It's something that all parties need to treat as a necessity, as untouchable, because we simply can't accomplish any of our plans and goals for the future, whether it's for agriculture or whether it's for the cities and the suburbs, without the investment in water infrastructure. It'll be up to the next governor to upgrade our water funding, financing, and investment mechanisms to take advantage of new partnerships and revenue streams to help find out-of-the-box ways to innovate and help fully fund the water plan. And I know that stakeholders are hard at risk, many of you in this room, hard at work, that are putting together proposals for the next governor and the next legislature to consider. I've heard ideas and everything from sports betting to container fees, and if I'm fortunate enough to serve as governor, I will certainly be an active participant in these discussions. I look forward to hearing your ideas about ways that we can better use existing revenue streams, including ensuring that long-term support for key severance tax-funded provisions like the Water Supply Reserve Fund, the Aquatic Nuisance Species Prevention, and the Species Conservation Trust Fund are applied and used. And at the same time we're funding the water plan, we also need to update and take advantage of new and changing technologies. I come out of the technology sector in my private sector career, and I recognize the importance and contributions that ideas that are in the developmental stage today and ideas that might be a reality in 5 or 10 years that haven't even been invented today can have with regard to water. Now today, the water plan already sets an ambitious goal of 400,000 acre-feet of additional water storage, 400,000 acre-feet of additional water conservation, and 50,000 acre-feet of alternatives to the buy and dry of our irrigated agricultural funds. But I think that we need to think big and hopefully find a way to do even better by our state's water system, by leveraging new technology and even existing best practices to truly enhance our conservation efforts. I think if we're diligent about updating our water data and with recent drought information, enhancing our policies to reflect basin implementation plans produced by basin roundtables, and identifying opportunities for integrated regional water systems, the result will be a more resilient water supply throughout Colorado. And of course, we can explore current capacity of existing storage infrastructure and evaluate where it can be enhanced as part of that overall strategy. You know, across our state, I meet a lot of people who worry that growth is chipping away at what makes Colorado such an amazing place to live. Now, none of us want to see that. And to prevent it, we need to invest in conservation and efficiency and make sure that our plans will work for now and in the future. The Colorado Water Plan, thanks to you, your work, and Governor Hickenlooper's work to make it a reality, show that water doesn't have to divide us. It can, in fact, unite us. But as you also know all too well, water can divide us. It can pit Colorado against our downstream neighbors, and even within our great state, even in the district that I'm honored to represent, we include both Front Range communities and Western Colorado communities. And I want to share a little bit about the core principles that I will manage those conflicts, both interstate and intrastate, as your next governor. First, I'm sincere in my belief that the management of Colorado's water is best left to Coloradans. Under my leadership, Colorado will resist any and all federal efforts to dictate water decisions, as well as any attempt to export our water to moneyed interests outside of our state. We will, of course, honor the compacts we hold with downstream states, but I'll always fight for Colorado's right to water that originates here, and I'll continue to be a champion for our state as the changing climate and growing populations stress our water supply. If water is the lifeblood of our state, which I believe it is, then of course the Colorado River is at its heart. And we're in unprecedented territory regarding a shortage declaration. We can't afford a lack of vision in confronting the challenges that we face, and of course it's time to put politics aside and unite as Coloradans. Though the prospect of a call on our water is looming, it's not imminent, but regardless, the next leaders of our state need to be ready to aggressively defend our rights to water that originate here in our great state. Second, we must continue the work of formulating the interstate contingency plans that benefit Colorado and which can be implemented as we face warmer temperatures and climate change, reduced precipitation, diminished reservoir levels. We should continue adoption of technology that helps us save water and at the same time push for stronger conservation measures in the water plan for urban and suburban parts of the state, especially many of our new developments. Third, we need to respect the critical role of the Colorado Water Conservation Board in developing water policies. I'll be a governor who respects the Colorado Water Conservation Board and Interbasin Compact Committee and the needs of the 9 basin roundtables in our state. To many Coloradans in the high country and the western slope, some communities which I've represented for a decade in Congress, future trans-mountain diversions pose an existential threat to the health of our rivers and our agricultural economy. So I want to be very clear. As a matter of principle, I will oppose trans-mountain diversions that aren't developed through the collaborative principles that the Interbasin Compact Committees have agreed on, and will never preclude Western growth or needs in these conversations. Finally, we need to limit and innovate to escape the practices of buy and dry in this state. 500 to 700,000 acres of agricultural land are at risk due to growing municipal water demands. We should encourage the use of alternative transfer methods which respect property rights and offer voluntary ways for farmers and ranchers to do their part in reducing our water usage and are a win-win scenario. Alternative transfer methods give farmers and ranchers the opportunity to lease their water while protecting their property rights. Of course, the idea is not entirely without controversy. Ranchers and farmers who are skeptical of alternative transfer methods have every right to be, so let me state here and now that my administration will always seek a balanced approach to managing our population growth while supporting agricultural production as the primary revenue source for farmers and ranchers. And as we all know, there's no silver bullet. But as someone who's represented rural communities in Congress for almost a decade, I understand that managing population growth on the Front Range cannot come at the expense of our rural communities. There's a lot that we're proud about here in Colorado. Even beyond the laundry list I ticked off a few minutes ago, I could use the entire time talking about the great things here in Colorado, because above all, we're innovative, we're forward-looking, we pride ourselves in leading the way for the rest of the country, and that spirit has produced an economy and a quality of life that are the envy of our fellow Americans. And we're ready to apply that same brand of leadership to our real water challenges. And I look forward to working with each of you, because we can and will lead the nation on water policy, on management, on conservation as a headwaters state. And when other states face water stress or need to solve a critical water challenge, Colorado should be a model for how to succeed. Thank you again for bringing us together today around this extremely important topic. I look forward to hearing your questions, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It looks like we've received a number of questions. We'll try to get through a number of them if we can. First question, do you believe that government regulators should be allowed to devalue property without having to pay for it?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what that question means. It may be a reference to a very bad constitutional amendment that will also be on the ballot this year that I oppose. It is Initiative 108. It won't appear on the ballot under that number. It'll appear under a different number. But that would effectively eliminate the ability of local governments to be able to do zoning around everything from strip clubs to cannabis to any activities within their borders without having to effectively compensate those landowners. So I'm not sure if that's what that's a reference to. It sounds like a version of what you're talking about here. We value our local governments, of course, and cities, counties have a very important role in integrating different uses of land across their area, from agriculture to commercial to residential. And that's a right that I respect, and I would certainly oppose efforts that would prevent local government, for instance, from preserving agricultural lands in a county for their traditional use, and simply because somebody wants to build an office building there.
Thank you. Next question. As governor, will you appoint a special water advisor such as Governor Hickenlooper has done with John Stalp? And if so, who?
I think it's important to listen to a variety of stakeholders around water. I certainly don't have a problem having a particular set of advisors, and when we do, they will represent the various water interests of this state. In the district I already represent, Northern Colorado, including Grand and Eagle and Larimer counties, we have a wide variety of water stakeholders. We also, of course, have many claims from the metropolitan water districts in our areas, and of course in the state. We have even more. So I would want to make sure I listen to a broad diversity of voices with regard to water. However, we formalize that with regard to the administration.
Okay, next question. How would you, as governor, ensure urban-rural east versus west equity if Colorado River and Lake Powell levels drop to the point that Colorado must deliver water and ensure compact compliance?
Well, again, as I stated, as one of my matters of principle, I would oppose any trans-mountain diversions that have not been agreed upon by the respective areas. We obviously do have interstate as well as intrastate commitments, and I think the role of the governor would be, again, to bring people together from both sides of the divide to make sure that we can meet the water needs for our growing state.
Thank you. Next question. In the event of absence of severance tax dollars from the state budget, how do you propose to fund your programs?
I think that's referring to, I would suspect, the cyclicality of commodities in the oil and gas industry. Also, the danger to some of those revenues with regard to current ballot initiatives, namely Initiative 97. I think that certainly the severance taxes are an important part of our state tax revenue. It is, of course, true that they are an erratic source that varies extensively over time. So in finding the funds we need to fund our water infrastructure, we certainly need to look to diverse funding sources. I don't expect that one particular funding source would be able to meet all of those needs.
Next question. Does Colorado have enough water storage?
Well, look, to implement the conservation and storage goals of the water plan, of course, we should first take a look at how well we're using existing infrastructure, and yes, enhance where we can. I had heard from someone that yesterday my opponent said he'll build a lot of new water storage and argue that conservation isn't going to get us where we need to go. My approach is we need to look at all of the alternatives, because I think everybody that worked on the water plan knows that we, of course, need a balanced approach. So I certainly won't close the door on new storage, but I don't want to put aside important innovations that we can make in conservation to make sure that we're able to meet our water needs for the future.
Thank you. How would you support water providers who have spent years developing a water project in a collaborative process overcome those who oppose any and all water projects?
Well, that's a sort of generality. Every water project is unique. I would just say that I can answer it with the perspective I bring. So representing an area for 10 years that has a lot of claims from urban and suburban water districts, we always try to make sure that the concerns of our local residents are also addressed, meaning we encourage Denver Water, Aurora Water, whatever they're doing in our area, that they have listening sessions, that they sometimes alter their plans based on input from residents to minimize disruptions, to minimize any negative effect on the economic development or livability of communities that are home to the headwaters.
Thank you. Next question. Your opponent spoke to us yesterday and suggested that your plan for single-payer health insurance would take so much funding that none would be left for water infrastructure. What is your response?
Well, he likes to talk about me a lot. I'm flattered. Obviously, healthcare has no nexus to water policy. I hope that Western Coloradans in particular are certainly excited about my plans to save people money on health care. It's outrageous that here in Eagle County, as well as most of the Western Slope, excluding Mesa, people are paying 30 to 50% more for health care than Front Range residents. We will fix that, and I will support any reform that reduces costs, expands coverage, and maintains or improves quality. We have a lot of ideas to do that. They're on our website at polisforcolorado.com. For both small businesses to thrive, for farmers to continue to succeed, we need to stop Coloradans and Americans from being ripped off on healthcare costs and be able to save money for families.
Next question. Given the uncertainty with the future of WOTUS, what are your thoughts about Colorado taking over administration of aspects of the Federal Clean Water Act?
Well, again, certainly there's of course, legitimate federal interest for a number of reasons. We have, as I said, substantial public lands in our state that are very important for watershed protection. We also, of course, have an interstate aspect to water management. If the federal government is backing off of efforts to protect our headwaters and protect our streams and our rivers, certainly, along with other Western governors, I would certainly be supportive of moving forward with establishing some of those protections in Colorado. Because when it comes down to it, our waters, as we talked about, are not only an important part of our way of life, they're also critical economic drivers of the agricultural industry, yes, but also the outdoor tourism and recreation industry, whether it's fishing, whitewater rafting, or many of the other activities that draw people to our state and are a source of pride and enjoyment for many generations of Colorado residents.
Next question. How are you going to manage population growth?
Well, I view it as a challenge. Of course, it's also an opportunity. We should, reflect for a moment that we're fortunate to live in a state with a strong economy that people want to move to. But what we have to do a better job with is making sure that growth doesn't detract from the quality of life for those of us who are already here. That means that growth needs to pay its own way with regard to infrastructure, which means both roads and bridges, yes, but also water infrastructure. And I think the reason that many Coloradans are frustrated is we felt that some of the growth of the last decade has, in some ways, contributed to inconveniences and reductions in our quality of life. So as governor, it's a lot broader than just the water discussion, but water is certainly a part of it. We need to find a better way to make growth work for our state, so it's not something that happens to us, but it's something that can help make Colorado work even better.
Candidate Polis, if you support the shift from oil and gas development to other sources of energy, how can CWCB continue to provide financial assistance to water users with limited severance tax funds?
Well, as I think there was a previous question about severance tax funds, they obviously play a very critical role for the state. It's also a role that changes over time, largely based on the pricing of commodities. We are very excited about building out the renewable energy economy. It means a lot, certainly in agricultural areas in both eastern and western Colorado, for farmers who recognize additional income from siting solar or wind on their land, helping to diversify their income stream away from and to be less reliant on commodities-based products like agriculture and oil and gas. So it can provide a way of leveling out those times when pricing isn't as good in those areas and diversifying the income stream for farmers. And of course, jobs for kids and grandkids in eastern Colorado and western Colorado that might be able to have a job in installation or maintenance of solar and wind, especially in areas that don't have a lot of economic opportunities. So I'm certainly excited about what the renewable energy economy already means today and will mean today in both eastern and western Colorado.
Thank you. It looks like we have time for one more question. What is your opinion on the recent proposal to transfer water from Fort Lyons Canal?
Well, I'd be happy to hear from you and take a look at that. Again, I don't have a specific opinion that I'm going to weigh in on any of those specific water projects today, but I wanted to approach it as, again, from a perspective of values. You know that I will always involve the water stakeholders in our decision-making progress, oppose Trans Mountain diversions, make sure that we have a plan in place to meet the funding needs of the water infrastructure we need in the face of a changing climate and population growth.
Okay, that's all we have time for. Congressman Polis, please welcome, thank him
Thank you.
for being here.